This is Catherine ASMR, and today I'm going to be talking to you about more of my books, because there's nothing I find more relaxing than listening to other people talk about books. So whether that's a librarian roleplay or just someone talking about books, especially if it's their favourite books, because that positivity just shines through. But I'm rambling now. I'm going to be talking about a number of books I have here. Some of them I've read, some of them I haven't, most of them I haven't, because I brought more unread books with me to my new flat than books I'd already read. But I am some of the way through one and I've read a few others. So I'm going to be talking about the books a little bit and reading the blurbs, tapping on the cover, stroking the cover, page turning, all of the usual suspects. So let's get started. The first book I have is I Am a Cat by Soseki Natsume. I thought it was, but I didn't want to butcher that. And yes, I did buy this book because of the title. This is a Japanese classic. And it's a story told from the perspective of a cat, basically just analysing human behaviour. I'm only a couple of pages into this, but I really like the writing style so far. This is 2 books in one. Actually, this is one of 2 books with that format in this pile that I have next to me. I am a cat. As yet, I have no name. So begins one of the most original and unforgettable works in Japanese literature. Richly allegorical and delightfully readable, I Am a Cat is the chronicle of an unloved, unwanted, wandering kitten who spends all his time observing human nature. From the dramas of businessmen and school teachers to the foibles of priests and potentates. I don't know how to pronounce that word. I'm pretty sure it's potentates. From this unique perspective, author Soseki Natsume offers a biting commentary shaped by his training in Chinese philosophy on the social upheaval of the Meiji era. The next book on my list is also a Japanese fiction. I think this is the last on my pile that is a Japanese fiction. But this is 1Q84. I don't know if you're meant to pronounce it like that or as 1984. For some reason in my head I always think of it as 1984, but obviously not George Orwell's version. But yes, Haruki Murakami is one of my very favourite authors, up there with the Bronte sisters. But obviously he's alive, so he gets some points for that. That's a good sound. So this is also 2 books in one. I have read really enjoyed it. As always, with any of Haruki Murakami's books, you leave feeling a bit unnerved and like you might have what I was about to say would potentially be a bit triggering. Like your body doesn't quite feel right afterwards. At least that's how I feel. I feel like my mind has been altered after I read a good one of his novels. This is probably my joint favourite of his so far, but I haven't read book 2 or book 3, so I'll save judgment. So, my favourite of Haruki Murakami's novels is The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle, which is, I would describe it as surrealist, but the kind of surrealist that you could imagine it being possible in our world. It's like our world, but slightly different. And it's not quite magical, but it's not normal either. I wouldn't describe it as magical. It's not like there's magic in his books, really. Although I do remember it raining fish or something like that in one of his other books. But it's never described as magic, it's just kind of described as how the world is. Unreal, basically. And this is another one of those. And the characters kind of live between these two worlds. And one has 2 moons and one has 1 moon. And the parallel world is just slightly different to the original world, but which is the original world, really. So yeah, it's very interesting and intriguing. I'm looking forward to reading book 2 in here. The next book I have on my list is Tropic of Serpents, and I don't know who the author is. And this was one of those books, so it's a sequel. The first one is A Natural History of Dragons, and I just think that that is the most clever title. Anyone who's interested in dragons, or even just natural history and museums or anything like that, that title is just going to bring them in. And because I am both of those things, I just snapped up the first one straight away. But after reading the first one, I really liked it, but it really takes something special for me to want to pick up the sequel of a book. I'm not someone who sticks to series very often, because if I find a book good, I'll assume that it's not getting better as the series goes on, because most don't. Most, let's be honest, depreciate in quality. Well, I don't know if it's fair to say most, but a lot depreciate in quality as the series goes on. So basically, I will only continue a series if the first book really shook me and desperately made me want to find out what happens. Because even if it's a good book, I'll take the possibility of a new book being a great book over just, casually enjoying the sequel of a book I just thought was good. So this is one of the rare books that I decided to pick up the sequel. It took me years to decide whether I wanted to pick up the sequel or not. That's how serious a business it was for me. But after, a couple of years of thinking about the book, you think, right, I probably should get this. The first one obviously left an impression. Having said that, I haven't read it yet. I think I started it. But I don't think I was in the right frame of mind to get into it, because the first one was a slow burn. I wouldn't even necessarily say it was a slow burn, I just think she's not an action-packed writer, which is fine because that's not what attracts me to a book anyway. But it does take more time and like effort to get into those books, and I just don't think I was there when I tried to start reading this again. Which is not the case for this one. This is the best book I've read in a very long time, and I said that in my last video about Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and that was the best book I'd read in like years. And then I read this one more or less straight afterwards. Maybe I gave it a week, but pretty much immediately when I started reading this, I knew it was going to be a book for me. And the funny thing is that, as I've mentioned before on my previous book talk video, I'll link that somewhere so you can go and watch it if you haven't already. I often buy books for my dad, and this is a book that I'd bought for him maybe a year ago, but I completely forgot that I had. But I'd seen it, I'd read the blurb, I thought he'd enjoy it, and then I was in the bookshop recently and just completely forgetting that I'd gotten it for him, or that I'd even read the blurb or anything like that. I picked this up, read the blurb. Obviously the cover's beautiful, that's kind of what attracted me to it, but I more or less look at every book when I'm in the bookshop anyway. And then I read the blurb and I just thought it sounded epic, so I'll read it to you now. 6 extraordinary magicians, 5 chances to win, 1 secret society. Once a decade, the world's best magicians are invited to join the elite Alexandrian Society. Its members enjoy a lifetime of power and access to ancient secrets. But only 5 places are offered, so after recruitment by the mysterious Atlas Blakely, the candidates must complete a rigorous year of arcane study. Libby Rhodes and Nico de Verona are inseparable enemies and cosmologists who can control matter with their minds. Parisa Kamali is a telepath, Raina Mori understands the flow of life itself, and Callum Nova can manipulate desires. Finally, there's Tristan Kane, whose powers mystify even himself. The rivals must survive their trials, and if they can prove themselves, they will. Most of them. So yeah, it's pretty much as exciting as that. If I was going to design a magic system, and I did try once, I tried to write a novel. I think I wrote 15,000 words, and then it was really, really bad. But she essentially did well what I tried and failed badly to do, which was to create a magic system that felt real, based on like very real scientific principles. The way she describes everything is the way that I tried to back when I was trying to write, basically. But I'm glad that she did it and not me, because she did it much better than I ever could have done. But yeah, it's just an incredibly smart book, and I recommend it to anyone who enjoys magic and all science. The next one I have on my list, fittingly, and I just changed the order of my books because I realised that moving on to this one after the comment I just made would make more sense narratively, is and this is about the ribosome, which is a little thing, organelle in our cells, which decodes the genetic code of our DNA, and basically turns it into amino acids, which are compiled into proteins, and proteins make up some of more or less everything in our bodies. So more than our muscles, our organs, like they make up some of all of our cell membranes. So all of our cells have, protein in them, and neurons and our immune system. Basically our proteins do everything. Everything is a fast generalization, but yeah. So this is a book that I had pretty much forgotten that I had. It's just one of the ones that slipped to the back of my consciousness, and after I bought it I didn't really think about it again until I was preparing for this video, and I looked at it and I read the blurb and got really excited by what I was reading. So thanks to this video I'll probably pick this up quite soon. I'll read the blurb now. Everyone knows about DNA, the essence of our being, the molecule where our genes reside. But DNA by itself is useless without a machine to decode the genetic information it contains. The ribosome is that machine. Venki Ramakrishnan tells the story of the race to uncover its enormously complex structure, a fundamental breakthrough that resolves an ancient mystery of life itself. And the reason I got excited by this is because one of the reviews by Bill Bryson said, if someone had told me that one of the most witty and enthralling books I'd read this year would be on the quest to understand ribosomes, I believe I would have laughed in his face, but I would have been quite wrong. But that's awesome. I'm very excited to read it. Okay. The prettiest book I have to talk about today is A Picture of Dorian Gray. The Picture of Dorian Gray. This book makes the best sounds. Especially because the cover is textured. And of course because it's a hardcover. So I got this in Australia, and I'm pretty sure I got it for like the same price as a normal book because there was a 2-for-1 special on these editions, and they have beautiful gold sprayed edges. Thank you to the person who commented last time reminding me that they were gold sprayed edges. But yeah, they're beautiful. So I don't know a huge amount about this book, and I quickly looked over the blurb before I started recording, and it's slightly different to what I believe this story was about. So I'll read the blurb and then I'll tell you what I thought the story was actually about. Okay. When having his portrait painted, Dorian Gray declares he would give anything to stay youthful, even his soul. Dorian descends into a life of decadent excess, and while he retains his youthful looks, the portrait becomes horrifically disfigured. Oscar Wilde's only novel is a dark, Faustian fable of wish fulfillment that leads to an inescapable day of reckoning. That's exciting. Okay, so what I had gathered from what this story was about is slightly different. I thought the person, Dorian Gray, went into his attic and just found a portrait of himself. And I thought the portrait mimicked what was happening in real life, but physically. I mean, obviously, there's a metaphor there in that it is mimicking what's happening to his soul in real life, I would guess. Obviously, I'm only guessing from the blurb that that's what that is about. But yeah, it's just slightly different when your expectations are subverted by that. And yeah, just reading the blurb again makes me very excited to read this. But I don't know about you, I always struggle to start reading a book as pretty as this because I really disfigure my own books. I try not to, but accidents happen, and I tend to take books around in a bag with lots of other stuff, because I mainly read when I'm out and about rather than at home. Oh gosh, so beautiful. Oh my gosh, even the pages, just so high quality. Unsticking would have sounded just then, but hopefully it was okay. If not, in editing I will edit the volume down of those specific bits. Okay. And the last novel I have on my pile is The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. And I got this because, well, for two reasons. I think it was the Waterstones book of the year, which for anyone not in the UK is our big bookshop. And also I used to watch this one particular booktuber, very much outside of the mainstream booktube sphere, but she used to basically give me all of the knowledge that I had. Basically just used to keep me abreast of the kind of books that were being listed for the Women's Prize for Fiction. She'd give reviews of lots of those, the Man Booker Prize, the International Booker Prize, etc. Not all of them, but that was sort of her reading taste, so I feel like I used to get a lot of knowledge about what was happening in the book and literature world from her. But then she started a family and she no longer makes videos, as far as I'm aware. Which is very sad because I used to get a lot of my book recommendations from her. And her channel was called Reads and Daydreams, but then she changed it to just Lauren Wade. But yeah, she recommended this book, so I got this a while ago. I maybe 10 years ago. That's crazy. No, it can't be 10 years. Maybe 8 years ago. I feel like this has a similar theme actually to The Picture of Dorian Gray, in that I think there's a dollhouse in this which I think mimics real life. Anyway, we'll find out. There is nothing hidden that will not be revealed. On an autumn day in 1686, 18-year-old Nella Ortman arrives at a grand house in Amsterdam to begin her new life as the wife of wealthy merchant Johannes Brandt. Though curiously distant, he presents her with an extraordinary wedding gift, a cabinet-sized replica of their home. It is to be furnished by an elusive miniaturist whose tiny creations ring eerily true. As Nella uncovers the secrets of her new household, she realizes the escalating dangers they face. The miniaturist seems to hold their fate in her hands, but does she plan to save or destroy them? So that is the last novel, and I thought because it's a very pretty book that I'd include this, which is a 5-year diary, which also has really pretty gold sprayed edges. And this is a diary. You're supposed to write a note in every day, just a line, so it never takes more than a minute, so it's meant to be more sustainable, and that way you can look over 5 years and see the line that you wrote for each year. I just thought it was very cool. So they are all the books I have to show you today. I hope you feel relaxed, and if not, I